pass through these altered states of consciousness and not to be identified with the content of your experience. Because once you get identified, you're opening yourself to a whole host of problems.
Yeah, and
because you can let yourself be possessed by certain psychological forces, and then you lose yourself in them. You start to create a kind of like a schizophrenic split in your personality.
Yeah.
And this is what sometimes they're referring to with this kind of terminology, demonic possession. Psychologically, what does it mean, demonic possession? All that it means is that a certain force from the unconscious is overwhelming the conscious mind to such a degree that it completely consumes the identity.
And it sometimes is exaggerated. So this little monster is like becoming so big, and you enter this world of this emotion instead of just seeing it objectively.
Right, and that phenomenon already has been behaving as if it were an independent entity. Now you're fueling it up with your identifications, with your attachments. You are giving it a different evolutionary story. You're helping it to evolve, in fact, with the collaboration of your identity. And so you can think of it like a kind of mixture of your mental identifications of the ego and that particular psychological force. And this is why some people, they can suffer from some complexes, like when their mind is overwhelmed by a particular archetype, and then that archetype, let's say, is tremendously compassionate. It doesn't have to be necessarily something demonic. It could be something very very sweet, very gentle, very filled with loving kindness, let's say. But still, if you get identified with that form, then you're going to start feeling, oh, I'm a special messiah. I have my mission in this world is to liberate humanity as humanity's savior. And once again, you're possessed by an archetype of your own unconscious. So really learning how to remain unidentified with overwhelming experience is the master key. And the essence of Tantra is precisely this, in many different contexts. And it's actually a little bit of a more challenging path, because it equates to basically learning how your mind can be in chaotic environments while still preserving your sense of balance. So, for instance, if you're intoxicated with sexual desire, in a similar way, you must learn to experience this intensity of desire while still there is a separation within yourself between the witness and the expression, the content and the expressions of the mind. And that's really essential. Once you can do that, then the inner realm is there as your guru for you to learn. It's always holding up a mirror for you to see more clearly into yourself. So then these forces, instead of becoming enemies, they become your guides. They become, because it's all you. Essentially at the end, it's all you. Different expressions of your own consciousness, which give different metaphorical manifestation, different masks of the same original face. So we can have tremendous insight if we know what is the mechanisms of these masks, because they're basically different types of, if you want to call them, identity. Because remember, it's an old-fashioned way of understanding this outdated vision of man having a single self. It's much more truthful to understand that. I love Carl Jung's vision, because I remember I told you, he sees consciousness is like a room through which many spirits can inhabit. And you can think of a spirit as to use the term loosely, as a type of psychological force, which when the distance grows between your conscious mind and your unconscious, it starts to behave as if it has an independent life and an independent reality of its own. So for instance, let's say you have an initiation, a tremendous opening of the mind to insight. That drops a seed in your unconscious. And that seed can evolve. The seed can turn into a tree. The tree can start forming fruits. And those fruits can drop seeds and grow other trees. It can, and that's how everything in our mind can be very strongly intertwined and interconnected. So when you have that seed from, let's say, it's just a small glimpse of insight, and then it starts to build momentum and assume a life of its own, you've given birth to a spirit in you. So now ultimately we want to be able to allow these forces to be in favor of our well-being, not as enemies for our well-being. And the only way to do that is to develop this quality of non-identification. So it's, in a dream it could be especially challenging. So the first thing one has to learn is how to identify different types of dreams. So we have the samsaric dreams, we have the dreams of clear light dreams, which we've talked about. Then there's a third category of dream, which is, in fact, it's not even a dream in the ordinary sense. It's just when the mind is, you're asleep, but the mind is purely calm and quiet, and there is an absence of self, or an absence of an I, or an ego. Then there's just non-dual awareness. And if this non-dual awareness can be maintained, then it's like what we talked about, when you can be in the world but not of the world. So you're experiencing all this dream phenomena, but never for a moment is there a forgetfulness of the original nature of the mind. That's always like a shining light that gives not only tremendous clarity into your dreams, but turns the dream into a type of alchemy.